Hey, it's Juck, and today on the show, James and his linebackers, playoff changes, a forgotten Buckeye, our favorite beat writers, in the 96 Citrus Bowl. Let's get to it. He answered that was not true. He's full of shit. But I'm not ready to say it's going to happen this season. It's going to happen this season. Do whatever stupid deals you want to do, like the most ridiculous buyouts in the world. Hey, you want to be careful. We'll get a total pass. We'll get a pass. Give us our jerseys back. It's our birthright. James Lurinaitis and Matt Guerreri spoke yesterday, and we're going to go through the team news we got out of that. But first, and I don't want to be repetitive, as I know everybody is talking about James Lurinaitis, but I think this is so important. I think this man is so special, and I think that this coaching staff is now becoming a very, very dangerous staff.
That means we've got a
So let's dig in on the James presser first, both what he had to say about himself and some player news, because some coaches can say a whole lot without saying anything at all. James hasn't developed that skill yet. We got some serious nuggets out of this. So much so that when I was taking notes, I had to switch over to a sheet of paper because I couldn't keep up with typing on my phone, as I'm a slow typer with chubby fingers, you may have noticed. Anyway, there was a faction around the Buckeye sphere, and even in my comments, who were saying, how do we know James is going to be a great coach just because he was an excellent player? We've seen so many great players fail as coaches. And that's true. Absolutely we have. But here's why I think that James will be a great coach in addition to his amazing experience as a player. So there's this demographic deal where you can see on YouTube the age of the people who are watching you. So I know that this little audience is made up of people that are my age or a little older with lots of life experience. And we have all ran across men in our lives who are so successful at everything they do, with great families, great personalities, everybody loves them. And maybe if you're a little like me, you might be a little jealous, right? A little bit. But the guy is so incredibly likable and genuine that you end up liking him anyway. James is the type of guy that those type of guys look up to. Like, I really think he is just that special of a guy, man. And when half of your job as a college coach is winning people over, I just don't think you could have anybody better than James Lurinaitis. Getting young men to follow your lead, like, he's just that type of guy that's so impactful. Yesterday, we learned from James that not only did he make it clear to Ryan Day that he wanted that linebacker's job when he first came in from Notre Dame, but we definitely know that he wants to do this as a career. And I don't think he'll just excel as a linebackers coach. I think if he chooses, he's going to climb the ranks in the coaching ladder quite quickly, and he just may be the next Vrabel, Fickle, Marcus Freeman if he wants to go that route. He's got all the tools to do it, and then some. In fact, if you compare him to those guys, he may be the best yet. Who knows? But all signs point to him being a great linebackers coach. We can start right there. So let's hit on a few things he said that gave me some real confidence. But I wanted to know if you guys knew this. I hadn't heard this. He said that Brian Hartline is the one that called him and wooed him from Notre Dame to come back home. I hadn't heard that. I don't know if yesterday that was the first that was said or if that was common knowledge, but that's something I didn't know. If anybody knew that, please let me know, because somehow I missed that if so. But I think that we definitely need to put that on the Hartline all-time list of recruits. That's like a 7-star recruit getting Laurinaitis to come from Notre Dame back home. So props to Hartline for that. So a couple of quick James comments. I try to be an ambassador of Ohio State. I love this school. It's changed my life. It's done wonders for me and my family. To play here, to recruit your position at the place you love. I'm sure there's some coaches who come off like car salesmen. There's really none of that with me because I've lived it. And I'm not from Ohio. That's a whole nother perspective when you're dealing with kids who aren't from Ohio. Just amazing stuff. I mean, the way this guy talks, he's just so sincere. It's all so real. And if you're a young dude hearing this guy, how impactful. It's just amazing. Like, where do I sign? So why did James leave his cushy radio job for 16-hour workdays with sweaty football guys? James said, I got a degree in football. Well, I got a degree in communications, but my degree is in football. And when I was in media, I noticed that when I was interviewing coaches, I was just getting fired up and I wanted to be around the game. He said to himself, James, you're 35, and if you don't do this now, you're going to regret it. It was incredibly hard for him to come to grips that he couldn't physically play the game that he loved since he was in 4th grade, and now it was gone, and he wanted to get back in. So I really commend him for taking a leap and doing what he knew that he wanted to do. I mean, he didn't have to do this, obviously. Guy made $40 million in the NFL, and it is a heck of a time commitment, but kudos to him. So as he was contemplating coaching, he thought about Jim Tressel, Luke Fickell, and Steve Spagnuolo, who he called the 3 most influential men in his life behind his father. And the thought of being that kind of man for a young guy was something that he really wanted in his life. He said he tells his linebackers that he recruits, I want to be there with you in the green room on draft night, and I want that wedding invitation as well, because that's the relationship he had with Tressel, Fickell, and Spagnuolo. And that's as sincere as it gets. This guy is as great of a role model as a young man could have. There's no doubting that. And we've talked a lot about James in recruiting. What does James think about recruiting? James said, recruiting is easy. If you know people, you figure out who the decision makers are, you build sincere relationships, you pay attention, and you take interest. This guy just naturally gets it, man. He's just naturally so sharp when it comes to human interaction. He cited how big it is now to be the linebacker coach instead of the guy who's coaching the linebackers, and that some teams had negatively recruited against him. And he chose not to name names, but I think we all know that he's talking specifically, for one, about KVA from Notre Dame. So there was a linebacker that really was in love with James Lurinaitis, Kingston Viliama-Asa. And James, I think if he was the linebacker coach at the time, could have got him. But Kingston was concerned that he wasn't going to get the job. Notre Dame gets the player. His mom also really loved Notre Dame as well, we heard. But I think that he's specifically talking about them for sure. And quite possibly TJ Alford right now, who he's recruiting. But TJ's locked and loaded for the Buckeyes, I think. I thought he's going to get him now. So James was asked what he learned as he headed out on the recruiting trail last month because there was 9 assistant coaches, so he was allowed to go in a temporary capacity. And he said he learned that the logistics of it were very difficult in prioritizing who you were going to see, how long you're going to spend, etc. But the most interesting thing that I got out of it is he said he was with Coach Day when he was traveling in Florida. And he said, I treated this like a job interview. And again, just another example of how sharp he is and how just naturally intelligent he is, that he would think of it, to take it like that. This is a job interview. Head coach is with me. I'm going to show him what I got. The dude's just awesome. I can't say enough. I mean, to say I have a man crush is putting it lightly. As far as differences now that he's the full-time linebacker coach, he's excited for his own office. He's excited about the little things. He's happy knowing that the guys are now officially his guys, and that's his room. And he's not excited to have to signal plays in. And I thought this was another very insightful comment. So some of the people questioning if they should have hired James for this position said that the linebacker play wasn't great last year, and that's true. Now, James said last year while he was signaling in plays, on game day, it kind of went like this. There were 5 guys signaling plays. He was one of those 5 guys. A play would happen. He'd listen on the headset for Jim's play call. Then he'd think, okay, what's the signal? Then he'd signal the play in. And because of this, he just wasn't really catching all the action, and he couldn't really pay attention to what the linebackers were doing. In addition to that, they were constantly changing signals because of the Michigan stuff, and he said it was like learning sign language every week. So you can see why he just couldn't have possibly been totally tuned in. And that's a bit of an oversight. I mean, he was coaching linebackers. We think maybe we could have got somebody else to be one of those 5 than the guy coaching linebackers if he can't pay attention. I digress. It's over now. He's the guy. James is the guy picking the linebackers now. So he's choosing who the Buckeyes are going after in linebacker recruiting. And Coach Day tells all the position coaches that they are the head coach of their position, which is interesting. I didn't know that right as soon as you're on the job, you're the guy choosing who you're going after. I kind of thought Pantone had a little more to say in that, etc. So that's an interesting tidbit that we got out of that yesterday. And we know that he's talking to Elijah Melendez and TJ Alford, both great linebackers. And I'm crazy about Melendez. I think he looks like a lot like Shazier. And Alford's really good too. But these are not the top guys in the country. These are, 9, 10. These aren't Heartline level type guys. And I trust James's evaluation more than any scout. But what I would love to know is if he had his pick right from the beginning, are these the guys that he would have been on? I don't know. But definitely, they're both really great players. But I'm excited to see when he makes his own board, what it looks like moving forward. And he did mention Heartline and how he really respects his room, and he wants his room to look like Heartline's room, which kind of makes me think that he wants to go after the very best of the very best. Not to say that these guys aren't going to be great. I think both of them are very awesome players. He said he's much more comfortable in year 2 with the scheme, and he cited that Knowles is incredible. And when they do self-scouting, he really gets it, how just incredible he is. The calls that he makes, seeing the adjustments that he makes, and he really catches it when they're reviewing back. And he knows now how to communicate with him best. That, he's the type of guy that he needs to ask him questions. James needs to ask Knowles questions. And he knows now how he wants his backers coached. And Knowles is a bit of an interesting dude. And I can see how it might take a while to figure out what's the best way to communicate with him. And again, James, master communicator, he's figured it out. And everything is going to be fantastic between him and Knowles moving forward. One thing that I think we would have all assumed about this guy, because he is just so impressive, is he was very cognizant when he first came in as a GA as to how he was going to be perceived. He didn't want to be the former player who came in acting like he owned the place or he was better than anyone, as he said some players have done in the past. It would be interesting to know who he was referring to. But again, just another example of his self-awareness, his maturity, his natural ability, and he's genuinely humble and grateful. Every time he brought up his NFL career, he said, and I was fortunate enough to be able to have the career that I did. He's just so grateful. I mean, he's just an incredible guy. And one more thing, we're going to get to personnel in a second though, but he was asked what he thinks impressed Ryan Day the most. And James said his intelligence about going about preparing. He said it's one thing to learn from clinics, but then when you get to do it live, a lot of the things that you've been taught just don't work. And playing gives him the perspective that he knows what the guys are going through, and he knows what plays are realistic for them to make and what aren't. And when he says something to them, it carries weight. And he cited Tommy Eichenberg saying that specific thing to him. And of course it does. I mean, obviously, he's James Lurinaitis. As far as last year and the linebackers, he wishes he played Cody Simon more. He said Cody had earned it. And, Steel Chambers had a stretch where he was not playing good. I think he's probably referring to getting Cody in a little earlier. It seems like they waited a little too long for that. But he regrets it. Moving forward this year, he wants to see a ton of reps from the less experienced guys. Mentioned Cody Simon doesn't really need the reps. He wants to see the young guys. And ideally, he wants to have 4, maybe 5 guys earn their way into the rotation. But if only 2 earn it, then only 2 will play. So who are the guys we're looking at here? Gabe Powers, top 10 linebacker in the country, 6'4", 230. James is very impressed by his growth, looks to see more. Arvell Reese out of our reopened pipeline to Glenville that's been so darn good to us over the years. There's actually been some talk of potentially moving him to defensive end, though. And, of course, C.J. Hicks, who everybody wants to talk about all the time. 5-star, one of the top 10 recruits in the country, athletic freak from Ohio. Been a lot of speculation as to why he hasn't seen playing time much as of yet. James said he's a huge fan of C.J. He needs to see consistency. He talked about his physical gifts just being off the charts, and that's no secret. But he said some guys just need more time. We all want to see this kid dominate. It was a massive recruiting win. He's unbelievably physically gifted. There's so much excitement around him. And talking about CJ Hicks not playing is like the new CJ Stroud needs to run more. It's just constantly discussed, man. And I sure hope that he gets that aha moment. And if anybody can bring it out of him, I think it's James. So we're all hoping that it's going to be CJ Hicks on the field a lot next year. But we got this Sonny Styles situation. Sonny Styles is such a freak, such a dominant athlete. James called him a weapon, but he's so versatile that it seems to be creating a bit of an issue. Like, if it's possible that a guy's so good he creates an issue, I think most of us just want to see him move to backer and be done with it. Let him excel and learn the position. And right now, he's currently still in the safeties room. So we still don't have an answer on exactly what's going to happen with him. But James was asked if he lobbied for Sonny in his room, and he said, I think every coach on the defensive staff would lobby for Sonny in their room. And he's right, because he could play at all three levels. I mean, honestly, think about it. This dude is coming in, and Mark Givler said this, and Mark Givler is an excellent guy to listen to, a recruiting guy from Buckeye Huddle. Mark Givler said that when he came in, Sonny Styles was the same size as Chase Young when he came in. So interesting to think if they had gone a different route with Sonny's physical development, could they have made him as big as Chase Young? I mean, maybe not quite that big, but could he play edge? Hell yeah, absolutely. I mean, the dude is just unbelievable. So I sure hope they settle on linebacker. They get him in there, let him excel, and earn a tree in the grove. Like, just get him in there and just let him go. Jeremy Birmingham asked James, does the jack position exist? Which was pretty blunt and hilarious. James said, yes, it does exist. Obviously, they didn't play the jack last year. They did the year before. And James said there's a lot that they have in the defense, and they're always discussing how much are they going to bring out? What are they going to put in? Which is similar to what Jim Knowles said last year when he said he had come to the realization that at Ohio State, he doesn't need to be quite as complex, quite as aggressive. He was used to running defenses with average to below average college talent. And now he has the Jimmies and Joes that can compete and just win the one-on-one battles. So he removed a lot of the gimmicks that he had spent his whole life developing to win with undermanned talent because he just doesn't need it so much. So do we expect to see the jack moving forward? I don't know, but I don't really think so. I really don't. And my final thought on James. I think it's incredible that the son of a famous wrestler is this successful, smart, well-rounded, and level-headed. I don't think it's discussed as much as it should be because I've listened to his dad in an old wrestling documentary, and he was a wild dude. But then I saw another snippet of his dad and James just sitting together talking when James was in like his second year with the Rams. And the relationship that they have and how, I mean, his dad said, I was a wrestler, and when I came home, I was just dad. And you just listening to James talk about, hey, I just thought it was normal. I thought everybody's dad painted their face. It was so cool, but it is really weird, man. I mean, if I ever had a chance to talk to James, I would love to discuss growing up as a wrestler's kid because I find that so incredibly interesting. I was also a massive fan of his dad, so that would be really cool to discuss with James. So when Juck on Bucks blows up and I get to talk to James, I will report back what he says about that. And I also want to know if he ever considered getting into wrestling after he retired from the NFL, because he'd obviously be a star at that too. So I also want to say one more thing about James. There were a lot of outlets that reported us that James didn't want the job yet because he's in no hurry and he has young kids and he's already wealthy and he was content just being a GA. Now, I call that connect the dots reporting, and I can't stand that. And as I was thinking about the connect the dots reporting and who the people were that reported that, it got me thinking about my favorite beat guys, and my favorite recruiting guys, and the guys that I think give us consistently the best information. We have the biggest beat in the country, and there are some high quality guys working that beat and some that aren't so great. But I wanted to know who you guys thought or who's your favorite, who do you respect the most, etc. So not opinion guys. We're talking news guys like Tom Orr, Tony Gerdeman, Doug Lamarisse, Kevin Noon, Tim May, Spencer Helbrook, Stephen Means, Nathan Barrett, Austin Ward, Jeremy Birmingham, Dan Hope, Andy Anders, Bill Rabinovitz, Bill Kurelic for recruiting, Dave Biddle, Bill Landis, Andy Backstrom, these type of guys, right? So who's your favorites? And I suspect that the top three are Tim May, Doug Lamarisse, and Jeremy Birmingham. So if one of those is your answer, I want to hear a backup, right? So I just don't want to hear Tim May, right? We all know Tim May's everybody's favorite. Everybody loves him. Everybody loves Doug Lamarisse. He holds people accountable, comes up with interesting topics. He's awesome. Jeremy Birmingham is the new age legend coming up. Also a stud with recruiting and a guy that Ryan Day talks to personally, so he can kind of convey and drop hints that others maybe can't. So I think those three are the three best. But let's talk about that second tier. Who is your other favorites? All right, on to Matt Guerreri. Now, listen, this guy obviously was a bit overshadowed, and that sucks. But incredibly impressive. And to be quite honest, he's mastered the skill set that James doesn't have yet, and that's coach speak. He said a lot and didn't reveal much, right? But he's been running Noel's system 11 of the last 13 years. He's a Northeast Ohio guy, which reportedly breeds the toughest men in the state. Just reports. He considers Noel's family. He considers Ohio State the best place in the country. He's been a defensive coordinator and coached safeties. Now, critics of that hire didn't like Noel's just grabbing a guy who was a buddy of his who knew his system. They wanted to go get the best safeties coach in the country, and I like that philosophy as well. But Guerreri said this, and I really like it. I think knowing where it came from regarding the defense helps. If you know the history of something, then you can add, tweak, say, hey, we've done this before, or we've dabbled here and that didn't really work. And I think that's a big advantage. I also think when you're talking about a guy like Knowles who's elevated the defense the way that he has, allowing him to bring in one of his guys who has this level of experience that Matt has and an Ohio guy, it seems like a pretty doggone good fit to me. It seems clear that he's a man about his business and he's a plug-and-play guy. And I think that's a massive advantage for a position coach not to have to come in and learn. I mean, plug him in. So I like the hire. And you're pairing him with the best recruiting secondary coach in the country. So let's not forget about that and Mr. O.G. Walt. We want to congratulate yesterday's free t-shirt trivia winner, and that is Flubsterba. He correctly answered my last Buckeye trivia question, which was, in 2012 and 2013, the Akron St. Vincent St. Mary Fighting Irish football team won consecutive state championships. That team was led by a future Buckeye who was a 5-star, top 15 overall recruit and National High School Player of the Year. And hint, it was not Paris Campbell. Flubsterby answered, Dante Booker. Now the answer, of course, is Dante Booker Jr., as Dante Booker was a star in his own right who played for the Ellet Orangemen and then the Auburn Tigers in a few years in the NFL. But I asked the boss, and she said Flubsterby wins. So, congratulations, Flubsterby. Today's free t-shirt question is coming up at the end of the show. Yesterday, a gentleman in the comments, and I read all the comments because I learn from the comments. Remember, I'm just in week 4 here, so I'm trying to learn what's working, what's not, what you guys like, what you don't. But he brought up Big Daddy Wilkinson. And he brought him up to talk about his pro career. And it got me thinking, I don't ever hear that name. We don't ever discuss him. Why not? I don't know. The guy was the number 1 overall pick. One of only 3 in school history. And we just rarely ever hear about him. So I called my brother and we're talking about Dan Wilkinson. And he said, I'm so embarrassed. I've never even told the boys, his sons, about Big Daddy Wilkinson. So I started racking my brain for other Buckeyes that were either great or that we loved that we never talk about. And I realized there's a ton. So let's fix that. Today we start a new segment. You could tell me at the end if you like it or not. But we're going to hit on one player from the past every show that we don't ever talk about. But I don't want to do Big Daddy today. which is exactly what I'm talking about. We never talk about this guy. And the reason is I want to do somebody else. My wormhole landed me down somebody else who was a favorite of mine that I wanted to do my first segment, Remember a Buckeye segment on. And he is a guy who revolutionized a position, and it was copied all throughout the NFL. And we today are going to discuss Ricky Dudley, a 4-year hoops player who came to Ohio State on a basketball scholarship, 6'7", 250 with a build we'd all kill for. He was a co-captain of the basketball team, but he was no stranger to football. Dudley was the 4A Player of the Year in Texas before he eventually went to Fork Union Military Academy. Of course, Fork Union also gave us Eddie George and Carlos Hyde, so we're big fans of Fork Union over here in the great state of Ohio. Ricky came out for football, and he was an immediate impact player. In 2 years on the Buckeyes football team, the two-sport star caught 46 balls for 680 yards and 9 touchdowns, and was an All-Big Ten player his senior year. Ricky went on to be a top 10 NFL pick and played 8 years in the NFL, including one with our Brownies, but he won a Super Bowl with the Buccaneers. And if you want to feel old, Ricky Dudley is now 51 years old. And that's today's Remember a Buckeye segment. I think it's kind of fun. You tell me what you think. Also, tell me if you got an idea for someone you think we should hit on that we rarely talk about. In national news, the college football powers that be have changed the playoff format. Since the Pac-12 obviously is now dead, it is the 5 highest-ranked conference champions and the 7 highest-ranked at-large qualifiers who are now going to make the field. That's fine, right? Here's where I diverge with their thinking. The top 4 conference champions will get the bye. I think this puts way too much emphasis on the conference championships because the conferences aren't even. The ACC and the Big 12 conference champions could be 11-2 sitting at home with a bye, while the Big 10 and SEC runners-up could be 12-1 and they got to play the first round. Do we need to go over the teams that are in the Big 12 now that Texas and Oklahoma are gone? I mean, at least the ACC has Clemson and Florida State, but the thought of an 11-2 Big 12 champion Kansas State team getting a bye over a 12-1 Ohio State Big 10 runner-up is utterly absurd to me. These conferences are not the same. It's silly, but at least in that scenario, we get a home playoff game, and that is going to be amazing. The first one of those, can you imagine? Give me snow. Listen, a lot of people don't want that. We're more of a finesse team at times, and you know, our biggest advantage is playing in a dome. But, buddy, this is football. This is Ohio. I know snow is not traditional football weather, but I would just love that. I would love it so much. All right, today's Juckeye shirt trivia question. Now, I actually got some interesting news today. There may be a sponsor who wants to get in on giving out the free shirts for my free t-shirt giveaway, and then you guys could pick. Do you want their shirt or you want my shirt? So I understand if you want to pick theirs. It's no problem at all. Okay. In the comments, the first person who can name for me the Ohio State Buckeye who won the team MVP in the 1996 Citrus Bowl wins the shirt. Go. And that's today's show. I want to remind you that the show is in podcast form on Spotify now. I encourage your feedback in the comments as it's my 4th week and I'm still teaching myself and learning the ropes on how to go about this through trial and error. I want to thank you so much. Please like the video and please subscribe if you haven't already. And like I always say,